Messianic Arian Radio. Only one God.
Hello, this is Elisa Rodriguez, and we are going through our the Jewish Encyclopedia on the Memra, just to give you a general idea about what the Jewish thought is of the Memra and how it coincides with what Arianism believes and what Arianism is, and how Arianism and Messianic Judaism is consistent in its belief system of who the Memra is and what role he is, whether he's God or not, and then when we apply that to Jesus, whether that's Jesus is supposed to be God or not. And so here we're going to talk about how the Memra is the Logos in the encyclopedia, the Jewish Encyclopedia, about how Judaism understood the Logos under the Memra. And so it says here, it is difficult to say how far the rabbinical concept of the Memra, which is used now as a parallel to the divine wisdom, which is the wisdom doctrine that Bart Ehrman was talking about in another video we made. And again, as a parallel to the Shekinah, because the Shekinah has its own doctrine as far as being the representative of God and so on. That's why we believe that Jesus is the Shekinah, Jesus is the wisdom, Jesus is the Logos, Jesus is the Memra, Jesus is the messenger of the Lord. All these are who Jesus is. It says, it's hard to understand all of that. It says, had come under the influence of the Greek term logos, which denotes word or reason, and or perhaps owing the Egyptian mythological notions assumed in the philosophical system of Heraclitus of Plato and of the Stoa, the metaphysical meaning of world-constructive, world-permeating intelligence. They're saying we don't know how much of this other systems of understanding has influenced rabbis in their understanding of the Memra, but there is some sort of, there are connections there are similarities from all of them, from the Stoics and from Plato and all of that. They've used the word, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the understanding came from. It could have just come from Judaism and understanding the Bible as it is. So, it says, the Memra as a cosmic power furnished Philo, the cornerstone upon which he built his peculiar semi-Jewish philosophy. Philo's divine thought, the image, the firstborn son of God. Now we're going to look here. I'm going to stop reading here. We're going to look and see what Philo thought about the Logos, who is the Memra. It's identical doctrine here, trying to show you how Judaism understood the Logos, how Judaism understood the Messiah, the Memra, how Judaism understood the wisdom, how Judaism understood this being who is not God but is representing God. So they say semi-Jewish philosophy because it's too close to Christianity, and they know what the problem is with that, so they don't want to address it, which is a problem as you get further into like 200 AD, and we'll talk about how the rabbis started deciding to not accept the Memra doctrine, the Logos doctrine, any further, and start pushing away from that because it was a problem because of Christianity and how we use the word Logos or the word. But these are Jews writing it, so it's understandable that they're going to say it this way. So, built his peculiar semi-Jewish philosophy, Philo's divine thought, the image. So Philo thought that the Memra or the Logos was divine thought, that he thought that the Logos was the image of God. He thought that the Logos was the firstborn son of God. He thought that the Logos was the archpriest, the high priest. He believed that the Logos was the intercessor. He believed that the Logos was a paraclete, which is like a comforter of humanity. And then he believed that the Logos was the archetype of man. Okay, so it's like a higher form of man. So he paved the way for the Christian conceptions of the incarnation, which is the Word became flesh. And Philo lived around the same time that Jesus did. He believed this. He may not have known of Jesus, but this was his understanding. So the incarnation of the Word to become flesh, and the Trinity, it says, but I don't see why that would be there. The Word which is the unoriginated Father, the Word which the unoriginated Father created in his own likeness as a manifestation of his power. So this is what the Jews understood, that the Word, the Logos, the Memra, was the unoriginated Father, so that means the uncreated, always existent Father, created this being in his own likeness as a manifestation of his own power. That means that the Memra and the Logos and the wisdom and the Shekinah and all of these other things are not God, but a manifestation created by God that looks like him. That's what it's saying. That's Arianism. That's exactly what Arianism believes. So the Word which the unoriginated Father created in his own likeness as a manifestation of his power appears in the Gnostic systems of Marcus. Irenaeus writes about that. So in the ancient, now just because it was part of the Gnostic system doesn't mean that they didn't take it from Christianity. Because if you look, Philo believed it. He wasn't a Gnostic. He was a Jew. He was in Judaism. And as we look further, as we look into the book of the Two Powers in Heaven doctrine, you will see that many rabbis believed this same stuff. But the Gnostics, yes, the Gnostics believed almost everything you can think of. But that was part of it. But it doesn't mean that that's where it came from. The Stoics believed the same thing. So it's just similarities. So in the ancient church liturgy, now this is interesting. Now in the ancient church liturgy adopted from the synagogue. So that means that they took a liturgy, which is like a prayer book or a song book from the synagogue. The church took it from there. Obviously, the church comes from Judaism. And it is especially interesting to notice how often the term logos, in the sense of the word by which God made the world, or his law, or himself made known, was changed into Christ. So it says, see Apostolic Constitutions, 7:25 through 26, 34 through 38. If you see that we took as a church the liturgy from the synagogue, and whenever it makes mention of the word, which God made the world and his law and everything else, whenever it says that in the same place, we changed it as a church to say Christ. Instead of the word, it's Christ by which God made the world. And so it shows that the Jews understood that, the Jewish Christians understood that who the word is in the synagogue, who the synagogue believes is the word, is who Jesus is in Christianity. That's why the Jews who accepted Messiah took the synagogue's liturgy and said, "Hey, look, we're going to take these songs, these sayings, and we're going to take it and bring it with us to the Christian side, or to the Messianic side, and we're going to just rewrite where it says the word, and we're going to put Christ, because that's who that really is." That shows emphatically that the church believed that who the word is, who the Logos is in Judaism, who the Memra was in Judaism, is who Christ is on this side of understanding. It's so obvious. They adopted writings from the synagogue worship, brought it to the Christian worship, and changed every place it says the word and put Christ in there instead. What did it mean in the synagogue? It meant the Memra. What does it mean in Christianity? It means Christ. So obvious. So then when you find out that the church has done this before, and you say, well, what does that mean? What does that do for Christianity? What does that do for the church? It says that the same understanding that the synagogue understands the Logos to be, the Memra to be, who is a divine being, who is not God, but is an agent of God, who is the son of, who Philo believes is the image and the firstborn high priest, intercessor, comforter from God. That's what he believes, and he got that from Judaism. It's not like he wasn't a Jew. He was a high-ranking Jew. These Jews want to pretend like they have no idea who he is, but he was a leader in the Jewish for the Jews. He's from Alexandria, which is the same place that happens to be where Arius comes from. That's the same place where Origen comes from. That's the same place where Alexander of Alexandria comes from. That's where the same place where all of these Council of Nicaea problem arises, is in the same place where Philo is from as a Jew and believes the same way as everyone in Alexandria believed, that the Jews believed this way in Alexandria, and that the Christians believe this way in Alexandria. It's not something that comes from left field. It's something that's happened in Alexandria, Egypt, and that's where it's originating. That's where it's been. That's where it comes from. That's where it's always been. So it's interesting to understand where these things are coming from. So possibly on account of the Christian dogma, rabbinic theology outside of the Targum literature made little use of the term Memra. So Memra is, because of the Christian dogma, it says possibly on account of or because of the Christian dogma, because of Christian understanding of who the Word is, and because of rabbinic theology outside of the Targum, they made little use of the word logos because it's controversial. Because they knew that if we use the word logos, we're going to have to answer about all of this logos stuff that they say Jesus is the logos, that Jesus is the Memra, that all of this is a problem for us. Let's just stop using Memra. Let's stop. That's what they did at 200 AD. After the church is established, after the church starts preaching, you start seeing like the dialogue of Trypho, where Justin is talking to Trypho about this very subject, about the Memra, and how he's using the scripture to describe the Memra to the Jews and saying that it's Jesus and that he's another God. This is absolutely what's been happening. So I'm showing you where we're coming from. We're coming from the Jewish tradition of understanding who the Logos is, who the Word is. And the reason I'm using sources like the Jewish Encyclopedia and basic things like that, because it's easy to go to. It's easy to check and find and search out. And that's where we need to start. Obviously, there's books on the Memra. There's a lot of more information on the Memra. So as we're getting further, now we're seeing Logos doctrine. So we started out with places where it talks about gods in the plural. We talked about where it talks about the Logos in the Targum and the word in the regular Bible, where it says the word of the Lord is a person, where the word of the Lord comes to, let's say, Abraham and says something, then how it's personifying that person. We haven't gone into Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22 and on, or 20 and 22 and on, but we're getting there. And this is where we get this understanding. So I'm trying to show you, as we're walking through this understanding, where this whole thing comes from and where Arianism fits in perfectly. So the next issue that we should really look at for a time is Philo, because we looked at what the Jews believed beforehand, and we've seen in the scripture where there's questionable doctrine verses that talk about plural gods or multiple gods or more than one God, and so on. And so now we're looking into we've looked into the Targum and the way it understands, and we've looked at the Logos doctrine, and we really need to look into Philo to find out what he was thinking. But that may be something we will look into and may not just yet. So what I want you to do is pray about it. Start looking into the doctrine of Philo. That's the next step. Honestly, on your own research, start looking into Philo and his ideas. Hope you guys have a great week. We will see you on the next video. Bye.
Messianic